Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this conversation, and also thank you for allowing me to present basically a wish list. So my project is, it's a book proposal. It's a book that I hope to work on beginning this summer. So I came to this, and I call it writing an ethnography of life. Some life is in quotation marks. And so I came to this project when my neighbor's dog, Mister, died. And my neighbor and my then boyfriend, my boyfriend at the time, they hated one another passionately. They both sat on the co-op board for our co-op, and they had different ideas about the direction that the co-op should go in, and as a result, they were arch enemies. So my neighbor's dog, Mister, died, and I found out about it. And I knew Mister; he was awesome. And so later that night, when my boyfriend at the time came home, I told him, Mister died. And even though this was his arch enemy's dog, his face got really kind of solemn. And he said, that's so sad. I mean, Mister's a life. Like, that's a life. And it's gone now. And I thought to myself, that reference to life was so incredibly loaded. He wasn't talking about the mere biological life of this dog. He was talking about life in a morally, spiritually weighty sense. And so this is the same life that gets thrown around a lot in the abortion debate. Those in the anti-abortion camp argue that abortion should be made illegal because the fetus is a life. And they're not referencing solely the biological capacities of the fetus. They're making a normative argument about abortion based on the fetus's status as a more than biological life. And so fast forward a few years after Mister's untimely death, and the Supreme Court hears a case called Gonzalez v. Carhartt in 2007. In the case, the court was called upon to determine the constitutionality of the federal partial birth abortion ban act, which Congress had passed to prohibit the ban of a particular abortion procedure called the intact voluntary extraction method. And so the Supreme Court was asked to determine whether this federal ban was constitutional or whether it was an unconstitutional infringement on the abortion right. And the Supreme Court said that it was constitutional, but the way that the Supreme Court said it was constitutional got me to raise an eyebrow and got me to thinking that the Supreme Court was not talking about the fetus's biological life, but was rather talking about fetal life. And so I'll quote the opinion for you. Justice Kennedy wrote the majority 5-4, which is how the Supreme Court splits these days. And Kennedy's writing for the majority said, quote, "Respect for human life finds an ultimate expression in the bond of love the mother has for her child." Let me just pause. This is the Supreme Court. Okay, this isn't a poem that he wrote. This is a Supreme Court. And so he said, "Respect for human life finds an ultimate expression in the bond of love the mother has for her child. While we find no reliable data to measure the phenomena, it seems unexceptionable to conclude some women come to regret their choice to abort the infant life they once created and sustained. Severe depression and loss of esteem can follow. It is self-evident that a mother who comes to regret her choice to abort must struggle with grief more anguished and sorrow more profound when she learns only after the event what she once did not know." And so it's worth noting that, and not in this quote, but all throughout the opinion, the court talks about this fetal life, it's being sustained in a woman's womb. There's no references to uterus or uteri in the opinion, it's rather wombs. And so we don't usually see rhetoric like this in Supreme Court opinions. And so I thought that this language indicated, this rhetoric indicated that the court was talking about fetal life. And this was a dramatic departure from the way the court once referred to the fetus. Roe v. Wade is a very sterile opinion in the sense that it doesn't reference fetal life at all, but rather talks about the biological life of the fetus. So Mister's untimely death, together with Gonzalez v. Carhartt, made me think that it would be fun to write an ethnography of life. And so the plan is to investigate the stakes of life, loaded life, both in the law and in the lives of the women who are thought to carry it. So it's legal ethnography in the sense that it's the analysis, or legal anthropology in the sense that it's an analysis of law, Supreme Court opinions, and traditional ethnography in the sense of working with people, field work with pregnant women. And I think that life is a fertile concept about which to write in ethnography because this concept confounds the binaries that typically order society. Life possesses a religiosity while being simultaneously a secular thing that the Supreme Court can talk about, right? Separation of church and state. It's thought to be created by a God, clearly, yet simultaneously acknowledged to be the consequence of human, indeed biological action, right? So the spermatozoa fertilizes the oocyte, and then ta-da, life is created. It's divine, but then it simultaneously defines what is human. Humans have life. It is thought to be best cared for by medical science, while simultaneously understood to exceed the capacity of human knowledge. And I'll talk about this a little more. It's ideal, but it still depends upon a material, worldly body to manifest itself. And it can be easily extinguished by destroying the materiality, the body that it inhabits, and hence we have huge debates over abortion. It is of this world and simultaneously otherworldly. And so the plan is to figure out or to render the contours of this concept of life by analyzing the law, but also by doing field work with pregnant women. Why pregnant women? Because pregnant women carry fetuses, and fetuses embody life. And just a note about fetuses and life, while the fetus embodies life in this weighted sense, life precedes the fetus. Life is both prior to the fetus, right? There's a contingent of voices that argue that life begins at conception, while the fetus is thought to appear some 8 weeks later. And then life is also subsequent to the fetus, but you have to interrogate how far subsequent to the fetus life is. And the truth is that the fetus acquires its gravitas because it is the medium for life. Through the fetus, life, which has no substance, no material, no form, is made tangible, is made palpable, is made physical. The fetus provides flesh for life, which is otherwise incorporeal. Indeed, the fetus performs the work of capturing this amorphous life and making it solid, substantial, and visible. And so field work with pregnant women will reveal how subjects live this contradictory concept. How do women who may believe themselves to carry life deal with the contradictions that erupt when they are carrying both a divine yet human entity, a religious yet secular thing, ideal yet material embodiment. And so that's only one part of the fieldwork that I'd like to conduct. The other part will be with providers of obstetric services. And the point of doing ethnography with that population is to watch for the contradictions that erupt when the sciences, which are understood as the quintessence of rationality, are engaged to care for life, which is an entity that exceeds rationalism. And so the paradox is that this quasi-ideal, quasi-divine, quasi-unearthly phenomenon of life is thought to be neglected, and tragically so, unless it is nurtured with the most vigorous of biotechnical, right, material, human, earthly attention. In the modern era, the care for the fetus is thought to be best administered within the biomedical paradigm, which is a paradigm that is held in monopoly by medical professionals. And so while the fieldwork with pregnant women will explore the incongruity that women experience when they might think themselves to carry life, yet also think that they are obliged to submit to professionals who are in charge of caring for that life. The ethnography with the actual providers of obstetric services will explore the ambiguous position that's occupied by the actual caretakers of life. And the ethnography of these caretakers is an important kind of corollary to the ethnography of pregnant women, because as healthcare providers, we share with women the social responsibility for the life that many, including the caretakers themselves, believe women to carry. And so that's the ethnographic portion. The other part is a legal anthropology, in the sense that it's a cultural analysis of law. And I want to analyze those Supreme Court opinions that call into question just how implicated life is within modern society. And I want to focus on abortion and death penalty jurisprudence because I believe that this jurisprudence reveals just how implicated life is within society. And so abortion, I've talked about it, those Supreme Court cases a little bit. When Roe v. Wade was decided in 1973, the Supreme Court first spoke about the constitutionality of abortion. The opinion is remarkable, but it's not remarkable in the way that it talks about the fetus. The fetus is really captured as a biological entity, and it's dispassionate in that sense. We moved from Roe v. Wade to Planned Parenthood versus Casey in 1992, in which the court limited the abortion right a little bit, actually substantially, but we see kind of the emergence of a concept of the fetus that's more than a biological entity. We see the emergence, at least of a consciousness of the fetus as more than biological life, for some people as life in the weighted sense. And then we arrive at Anthropology Carhartt in 2007, and we see the apotheosis of life. Now, together with that is death penalty jurisprudence. And the Supreme Court has yet to, well, it was a brief reprieve from the constitutionality of the death penalty in the early 80s, but we're back now to jurisprudence that very much supports the constitutionality of the death penalty. And life, in the weighted sense, doesn't make an appearance in death penalty jurisprudence at all. And when I say that it does not make an appearance in death penalty jurisprudence, you don't see the rhetoric that the court used in Casey. You don't see, in Anthropology Carhartt, you don't see the court referencing bonds of love or profound anguish or sorrow or grief. There is a sterility to the language of death penalty jurisprudence, and this is a sterility that would not be there if the jurisprudence was evoking life in this weighted sense. And that's not entirely fair, however, because you do see kind of life emerge in the Supreme Court opinions, but it's only in dissent. It's only those dissenting justices who believe that the death penalty is unconstitutional no matter how it is implemented. Thank you. That will make reference to the profundity of life. And this is not, the profundity of life is not at all referenced by those who would uphold the constitutionality of abortion, of the death penalty. And the last piece of that, of course, is that racial minorities are executed at disproportionate rates in the states. And so we have to query the intersection between life and racialized bodies. Are racialized bodies allowed to embody this notion of life? Are they somehow disenfranchised from embodying this notion of life? It makes, how is it that fetuses can embody a notion of life? Is it because fetuses are thought to be racialized? Do people come into their racialized bodies only upon emergence from the womb, from the uterus? So these are the questions that I'm interested in interrogating in this project. And because I have a little bit of it's there.